Hey Grand Seiko fans, today's the day I'm going to do this review of a Grand Seiko model, SBGJ021. I actually got a couple in the mail here in the last few days, and this one here is a Grand Seiko that I procured for a client. I was in the midst of looking for mine, and I happened to come across this one, so I went ahead and picked it up for him. So I haven't decided. I might do a review on this. He wants his watch, so I'll probably have to send it out before I can do a review, but possibly. Okay, let's get this dog and pony show on the road. Here's kind of a benefit of those who may not be familiar with Grand Seiko's packaging and what you might expect. Outer sleeve. Here is the big, help if I, beautiful Grand Seiko box. Outer box. Inside you will find this nice rice paper lifter. It's clever Japanese. Inside is a compartment. You get various things depending if this was shipped from overseas. This is in Japanese. I thought that this watch was purchased in the USA, but it's an idiot card that says don't do stupid stuff with your watch. Here's your warranty booklet. It's usually stamped, and it is a USA dealer. 1019, still under Seiko's 2-year limited warranty. Your certification card saying that it was inspected and positional tested, and they issue a certificate now. This is kind of like your Rolex papers. And your owner's manual, of course. This is the addition for the mechanical movement. This is an automatic wind mechanical, so you would get this booklet. And last but not least, Seiko's little polishing cloth here. The barcoded hang tag, etc. Pretty good packaging overall. Grand Seiko at this price point, some people might expect a little more. I think it's perfectly adequate. I mainly, when I buy a high-end watch, I'm interested in getting all the accessories and the box. It adds value and makes your watch a lot more desirable should you want to sell it later on. So that's the quick unboxing, and now I'll get into the review. Just got done sizing up this Grand Seiko bracelet. It was a little more involved than what I'm used to. Had to break out some tools here to get it done. Lots of tiny little screws and pins you have to deal with. No big deal, but it is a little more involved than, say, a Rolex Oyster bracelet. I was also setting the time, and I did confirm that this is a true GMT movement, much like a Rolex. At the first position, you can see the hour hand jumping, and the seconds keep ticking away. You pull it out to the second position, and it hacks, and you can set your local time. So that works just like a Rolex GMT. So I'm kind of happy about that. So just thought I'd mention it now. This is typical Grand Seiko stuff here. The Heritage case, the Zaratsu high polish or black polishing that Grand Seiko does. They're one of the few companies that does this anymore until you get into the real high-end Swiss stuff. The Dauphine handset, it's all very Grand Seiko. Nothing to really see there. What the star of the show here on these limited editions is the dial colorways that they use. And this particular one I find very attractive in this deep crimson red color. It's meant to simulate Mount Iwate at dawn, during a red dawn, where the red sky is reflecting on the snow on the peak. And that's the look that they were going for. At least that's what Grand Seiko's literature describes. And I will include a couple photos right here at this point. So that's Grand Seiko's inspiration for this dial. I love these unique colorways on their limited editions, and I like their nature-themed backstories on these watches. I think it makes them a little more interesting. And this sunburst pattern on here is quite unique. I've never seen anything quite like it. This textured finish, it's a very complex process of etching and electroplating and coloring to achieve this. I'm sure it's very expensive to do. And the sunburst pattern just is so reactive with light. As you turn it, it just follows the light. And of course, when you move it from light to a darker area, you can see how it turns a deep crimson red. And as you move it back towards strong light, it lightens up, almost has an orangish element to it. Very nice. So now I'll get to the back side and show the case back. There's some unique things going on back there that you might find interesting. Okay, here's a close-up of the case back with the titanium tungsten rotor in its iridescent graduated colors. This is a color scheme that Seiko uses to simulate the sky surrounding the Mount Iwate at dusk, and it's part of the theme of the watch. Seiko uses a complex anodic oxidation process on this titanium rotor to achieve this color. It's very iridescent. I happen to like it. I think it's not for everybody though. And while we're back here, you can kind of see some of the machining on this case. How every edge is absolutely perfectly straight. The lugs are beveled on the ends in a complex way. And that Zaratsu polishing, it's just very well done. Anyway, I will be back in a sec. Before I do the wrist shots, I thought I'd briefly go over the pros and cons. I'm going to spend almost zero time on pros. Everybody that has done research on the Grand Seiko, watched the videos, listened to the Seiko fanboys, pretty much it's all true. It won't scratch your back or wash your car or maybe get you a supermodel girlfriend, but the rest of it, pretty much true. Everything you've read and heard. Great watches, good value. You know, they are a solid alternative to, say, a Rolex. This example of mine, outstanding accuracy, -1 to +2 over a couple of week period. And that's definitely in superlative chronometer territory. So I'm very happy overall with the performance of this watch. And so I will get to the cons list next. Not a big list, a little bit nitpicky. The first thing is the bracelet. It feels to me like any other Seiko bracelet. It doesn't feel like the same quality as the watch head itself. It's a little out of keeping with the rest of the watch, so to speak. Feels a little Seiko-ish if that makes any sense. The clasp, no micro adjustments really, or on the fly adjustments like an easy link. I think something like that should be added. And the 19 millimeter width makes it a little harder to find strap options. This is a Grand Seiko and 19 millimeter. That's something that if you want to change up on straps and stuff, might be important to you. And also the last thing is the removable links are held together with very tiny screws and pins, which makes sizing your bracelet a little bit tedious. I'd like to see something more like what Rolex does with screw pins that are a little easier to manipulate. And I think that overall, if they made some few changes to that bracelet, it would be keeping with the rest of the watch at this price point. The thickness at 14 millimeters, it's a little bit on the chunky side. I think that Grand Seiko, if they could slim this down to 12 and a half millimeters, it would work a lot better for a larger group of watch buyers. It's not overly thick, but it definitely is a consideration. Lume or lack thereof, I think that Seiko, you make the best lume in the watch industry. It wouldn't kill you to add some lume pips on these Grand Seiko dials. I think that the lack of lume is definitely something that a lot of people consider, including myself. And the other thing is value, and that's kind of a subjective thing. This is not an inexpensive watch, and I think that it competes. It's competing with, say, Rolex Datejust, and that might make it a hard sell for some people. I know it was for me, but I was able to, I wanted to get something a little bit different. So I went ahead and gave this watch a lot more consideration than I normally would. But that is a consideration at this price point, that there is a lot of good competition out there. So that wraps up my list of cons, and now I'll move on to the wrist shots. Zoom in here for you guys. You can see how adaptive that dial is. You turn it away from the sun and it gets a deep crimson red, almost a oxblood red color. As you turn it towards the light more, it lightens up. And then that wonderful sunburst effect. All the indices sparkling. That Zaratsu polish on everything. It kind of gives the watch a jewel-like appearance. It almost wears like a piece of jewelry if you're into that. Grand Seiko. So here it is on its optional factory alligator strap. This is Grand Seiko's factory OEM strap for this watch. Push button deployment. Beautifully machined, branded Grand Seiko right there, and also on the buckle. I love the red overtone in this alligator leather. I think it's very complementary to the red on the dial. I noticed that right off. It's a very nice combination. I think I'm going to leave it on here. So anyway, that's my review. I hope that those of you who are Grand Seiko hunting found this somewhat useful. I know for myself, I like watching a live action video as opposed to just looking at static photos. I think you get a much better sense of what a watch is really all about by watching a video. So until next time, thanks for watching and happy watch collecting to you all.